hunter, a warrior. This is my destiny.
My lifelong dream has always been to harvest the North American Super Slam, which is the successful harvesting of one of each 29 big game species on the North American continent. And I told a buddy of mine that I wanted to do it, and he said, well, you know what, why don't you make a TV show out of it? And that's where we started Archery Quest. On this week's quest, we're headed to eastern Colorado to hunt with Royal Mountain Adventures, one of the top 10 places in North America to hunt giant mule deer. We booked this hunt at the beginning of 2013, and we had high expectations of this place. I had done a lot of research about Royal Mountain Adventures, and all the signs pointed here, and we both want to take giant mule deer, so here we are. Royal Mountain Adventures, top 10 best place to hunt mule deer in North America. On this week, I got a good friend of mine, Lance LeCad. We're talking mule deer in the 170 to 200 inch range.
Right.
He's a clown act.
And then?
A great guy to be around in camp, and I'm hoping he tags a nice buck this week.
I went to nursing school in Pineville at a small private college, Louisiana College. Around 2 years ago, I guess I graduated, and ever since graduation, I've been working in the emergency room. If there's a place where I want to learn and grow as a nurse, that's definitely where I want to be. I plan on going back to school, so it keeps me well up to date with current practices, medicines. It's an excellent place to learn. I like being in the emergency room.
Even though the sun was going down when we finally arrived here, you can see the area of the land, the terrain, and we were very excited, but we were sitting there thinking, wow, you know, it's gonna be tough to spot and stalk in this, you know. No trees, very little cover. It's gonna be difficult.
Where they're heading back into that creek, there's a good chance we can get him bedded. As long as he beds away from there, I mean, there's 30 deer out there. So, I mean, what we don't want to do early is get too aggressive where we blow them out of the country. Right. Yeah. You know what I mean?
They're very ethical here. They have a very, very strict but efficient management program.
You know, we've been really strict over the years in passing, you know, deer that are 3.5 years old that might score up to 190 inches or better. We know that going in, and we set that expectation early, and you know, it's worked out really well for us.
We're always working towards shooting big deer. That's our goal out here every year. I love eastern Colorado. It's the place where the big bucks live.
At Royal Mountain Adventures in Colorado, their strict management program allows them to offer very mature mule deer to their hunters. So 5.5 years and older is what they prefer their deer to be harvested, and it has served them well.
Some people start off at 4.5, but you know, for mule deer, obviously they have some really big potential at 5.5, 6.5.
Everything is boiled up right here. Got pictures of deer we're gonna be hunting, and I cannot wait till the first light in the morning.
Been awake since 3, couldn't sleep.
Like a kid the day before Christmas.
All right, brother.
Make sure he's mature, okay?
Hey, mine's gonna be bigger than yours.
No.
Yeah. Day one, they said, look, we're gonna set you over a water hole.
First morning, can't tell you the excitement.
When you get into terrain that you're not familiar with, it can be frustrating. And when you're hunting mature mule deer, they're gonna bust you and they're gonna get under your skin. So it's good to have a guy that not only knows what he's doing, but can take some of the pressure off.
He comes in, you just smoke him.
Okay.
All right, buddy.
We had winds at like 35 miles an hour that first morning. At times we could feel the windows flap and thought the ground blind any minute was gonna fly off the stakes.
At this early in the morning, the deer would still be in their bedding area behind the blind. But as the day wore on, they'd make their way to the feeding area, which was located in front of the blind.
We set up over water in ground blinds. Not what we expected, but it's fine because you know you're giving yourself the best odds.
Despite Lance's optimism and readiness, there was nothing to be seen at his blind.
No deer for us. We really don't. We have a good range that we can see with the naked eye. Really haven't seen much movement.
Meanwhile, less than a mile away, Robert was also in a blind, and the action picked up quickly for him.
At first light, I mean, just barely legal hours of shooting. Derek, my cameraman, looks to the back window of this blind and just taps me on the leg. He says, hey, big deer right behind us.
Robert had to get into a better position in the blind, but in the chaos of everything, he left his rangefinder on the ground, out of his reach.
He got where I was, I got where he was so I could get a shot. My rangefinder was on the other side of the blind, could not get to it for anything. I just guessed at it. I guessed he was 35 yards.
Robert guessed the distance of this giant muley and took a shot.
He was at 44, actually, shot just under him, barely nicked him in the bottom of his stomach. Don't know what happened. It happened so fast, so we'll just cross our fingers. I know y'all are all sitting there thinking, well, you know, if you'd taken 3 or 4 more seconds to get your rangefinder, you'd be holding a 180-inch deer in your hands. I know, y'all, I know this, okay? I made a rookie error.
I could tell right when we met with Robert that he was not happy.
Man, I don't know. Here's what happened.
He knew he had made a mistake.
Man, it was very tough to watch a 180-inch buck walk off. Run away with no arrow to him. It was heartbreaker.
He's very intense when it comes to the hunting side. He was pretty down about it when it comes right down to it.
Day 2. It's cold outside. We're bundling up. Back in the same spot. We're pretty pumped about it. It's over.
So day 2, we were out of the house by 5 o'clock and in the blind by 10 after 5. And I was waiting on pins and needles, man. Day 1 was tough. You know, as a guide, I want to have guys in position. Even if there's not an opportunity, I want them to see animals and feel that excitement and know that opportunity's there.
Big buck coming in. That's him. Get ready. If he comes in, he's dead.
Sure enough, we start off with a bang. Got a really nice 3x4.
We had a buck that we named the G2 buck. He was a 3x4 that came in with a big bladed G2 on one side.
He comes in, really doesn't give us a shot. I have a blind spot where the blind is.
And he had him at 64 yards for just a brief moment, and he turned and came right towards the blind, and Lance had him at 17 yards.
Joel obviously can see the deer perfect, but he never even gave me a broadside shot. The only shot we had was right at the chest. I wasn't gonna take it. Unfortunately, our wind was bad. It was going behind the blind, which was good for the water hole, but bad if there's other deer behind us. It spooked the deer behind us, so the buck in front of us obviously spooked. He went over the fence. We never saw him again.
couldn't see anything. He needed him to take 1 or 2 more steps to be in a window.
I doubt the camera could pick it up. But there's another buck. I don't know what he was. He sounded heavy. Right to our right. And he must have winded us because our wind is going right here. And he took off and it scared this buck.
And then it got interesting. Out of the corner of my eye, I saw a doe cross the cornfield. I picked up my binoculars. Obviously it was a doe, but behind her was a monster buck. I couldn't tell what he was at this point, but I knew he was big. We watched this deer, and I'm telling you, I knew that I wanted to kill this deer the minute I saw him. Again, he followed the same route as the other deer, went probably 150 yards out of our range, obviously, and all we could do was watch. But I knew after day 2, this was the deer that if I could target one, it would be him.
What are some key things that we need to look for to make a good spot and stalk?
Number one thing is we got to find the buck we want to shoot.
Right, obviously.
Hopefully we can find him either by himself, which I'm not really counting on this week. We're full-blown rut right now.
Right.
We're gonna most likely find it. If we can find him locked down with one doe, that would be just that's the cat's meow there.
Yeah.
From sitting down talking to Robert that first night for half an hour or so, I kind of knew we'd click. We're both on the same page. We like to have fun, but we're also pretty serious when it comes down to trying to get an animal. But even with 2 or 3, 4 does, that's not so bad. If we can get some wind kicking, they tend to bed on some side slopes or down in some bottoms, and that gives us a lot better chance to slip up on them that way.
Robert was more than eager to head back into the field in search of his monster muley.
Did some glassing, and I spotted a buck laid down with a doe. As we got a good look at him, we figured out he was a buck we wanted to take.
We've got a buck and a doe bedded on the other side of this ridge about a half mile away. Day 3, this is a day that I will remember for a long, long time to come.
He's an older, big, framey buck, and we had him in his bed with just a doe, and that's exactly what we look for out here.
You're crawling through cactus and desert scrub and briars. All these things are sticking in you, and there's nothing you can do about it. You gotta keep going.
We had to crawl across a giant flat. We crawled close to a half a mile.
And we finally made it up to this fence line, and Eric is looking at trying to relocate him again because we're close in the distance. We're about 250 yards away.
There's 2 gates there, and I was able to stand up and see horn tips on the buck.
I've got him bedded at about 180 yards right now. All we can see is the tops of his horns.
And at that point, I knew we had him right where we wanted him. We crawled under the fence and started making that final approach. It was slow going, lots of stickers, so we had to be careful with our movement and our noise, but we did have a nice crosswind to help cover up a lot of the mistakes we made when we put our hands on the wrong branch.
The deer was looking straight away from us, so we eased up a little bit more to about 60 yards. I said, look, this is plenty.
We got in about 60 yards, let Robert calm down, got everything set up. Robert went to full draw. I had a rock in my hand. I hucked it over the top of the buck, and I didn't get much of a reaction. He shook his head a little bit, didn't do much.
There was another rock. Can't get this deer to move. The wind is blowing real hard. You know, he can't hear. Eric says, hey, you got anything that I can throw, anything in your bag?
So I started picking through his pack, and I found a set of Allen wrenches that he uses for tuning his bow.
He's looking in my bag. Well, I've got my eye straight on the buck, so if he stands up, I can shoot him, because we have no idea when this deer's gonna stand up.
So we got ready again. Robert went to full draw. I sent that Allen pack in, and I sent it within 5-10 feet of the deer.
When the deer stands up, I come to full draw, and he's at 60 yards on the dot.
And he put it right perfect. The deer was quartered away pretty good. He slipped it in front of the back leg, came out right behind the front right shoulder. The Grim Reaper zipped right through, blood coming out everywhere.
See the deer fall and all these emotions roll into one.
Thank you, man.
He had a grin from ear to ear. He was so happy, especially after the first day. That miss really tore on him, and you could tell that he needed that.
There's nothing on this continent that I've not shot through with that right there. I mean, it's unbelievable. Penetration, blood trail. I mean, you watch them drop.
As Robert made his way to his hard-earned trophy, there was a great sense of accomplishment, considering all he had done to get there.
And as we're walking up to it, I did not realize this deer was that big. Oh my gosh. Look at that muley, man. Big 6x6, got a big fish hook coming off the back. I booked this hunt through Bow Hunting Safari Consultants with Jay Osting, and he told me that this was top 10 place in North America to come for muley, spot and stalk. A giant body deer, probably 300 pounds on a hoof.
What Robert didn't know was that Lance and his guide Drummond had been watching the entire hunt take place from over a mile away.
Let's go get him, man. Let's put him in the truck.
I mean, for us, this hunt has been 9 months in planning. So for me to watch him take his deer, it was almost like I had killed a deer. And then I couldn't wait to go down there and just see what kind of deer this was.
Did y'all see it?
Yeah, baby.
Hey, man. Did y'all see any?
Yes.
Come look at this dude.
He couldn't tote it. He couldn't tote it.
It was such a cool experience just to get to watch it.
The intensity of this hunt was finally over for Robert, and placing his hands on the horns of this deer was a very satisfying moment. A few days had passed since Robert had taken his giant mule deer trophy.
A giant body deer, probably 300 pounds on a hoof.
Now Lance was feeling the pressure. He had spent a few days stalking in the over 80,000 acres of hunting land.
These guides, their eyes are trained to spot out these mule deer with their optics. And I tell you what, if you don't like the glass, you don't have optics, don't come out here.
He was seeing game, but couldn't seem to get close enough to make a shot.
Even the guide was surprised. He's got a trained eye. He's been doing this forever, and he didn't even see the deer. So,
back at the camp, he sat down with his guide, Drummond, to chat about their hunt.
We're in mid-November right now. We're still reaching temperatures at, almost 70 degrees.
Right.
So these deer, they're in the full rut right now. They're really expending a lot of energy.
Right.
So they will be coming to water at least once a day somewhere. We'd like to kill, 5.5 years, bucks that are 5.5 years old and older.
Right.
It's kind of our goal. In fact, there's one buck, you're gonna hate me. He is dumber than a bag of hammers.
Yeah.
And I would say there's a quite strong possibility he will be within range this week. I'll tell you, the only buck that we have off limits this year is this particular deer. Yeah. He is just, the potential is so great in this one. We should have named him Young Skywalker because the force is strong. But we named him Kickers because he's got matching, 5-inch kickers coming out both sides. He is, you'll know him when you see him.
So after having my conversation with Drummond, I went into day 3.
All these deer are moving from this cut corn agriculture field coming back to bedding, and we're sitting on a water hole.
Not knowing what would come of day 3, that morning sit. Out of my peripherals, I spotted a deer coming over the horizon. Instantly, I told Joel, shoot her, get ready. He made a straight line for my side window, and just before he turned and stopped and paused for us, I identified this deer as Kickers, and I knew I couldn't shoot this deer. 24 yards out of my side window, here's Kickers. Strutting his stuff, yellow sunrise popping up in the back, purples, reds, oranges, golds, colors. You couldn't paint a picture any more pretty with this deer in the background, and I can't shoot him. He's got his pass card for this place, and This old boy had to pass him. It killed me so bad. And man.
Throughout the week, you know, my goal, honestly, is to try to have at least one stalk opportunity a day. And unfortunately this week, you know, we hunted 5 days and really only got in 3 good stalks.
I found a buck bedded down in some good sagebrush.
You wait for the right wind. You know, you need the wind to blow it. It covers your scent, it covers your sound.
We get to this fence line, and it's a perfect situation in the bottom of this creek to make a crawl at this deer. It's probably 200 yards still, but it's a sandy bottom. It's gonna conceal a lot of our noise, and we have wind.
It does lay in there. You know, here's one buck, he's laying down, we've got him.
So we get on our hands and knees and we start crawling. We probably crawl for about 150 yards. And out of nowhere, Drummond says, "Hey man, knock an arrow. These deer are coming." And man, they were right on top of us. I couldn't believe how close we had gotten, and they had no clue we were in the country.
But when we got up there, we realized what we thought was one deer was probably about 30.
They got downwind of us and spooked. I get on my knees, come to full draw, and those does blow out of the country. It was like a stampede of does.
And at that point, we were done. You know, the stalk was over. What we didn't want to do was get too aggressive at that point and push our luck.
Honestly, at the end of everything, it was okay. It's not as easy as sitting in a deer stand back home in Louisiana or Mississippi and shooting whitetail. This is hands and knees, this is crawling, this is thorns, this is bloody knuckles. You don't get to experience these kinds of things if you don't go do this. That's what the quest is. It's not about knocking off animals off of our list, it's all the things that go into it that really make this the quest.
All the hard work and preparation that I did for this hunt over the last 8 months, it really paid off. And when I get home, I know it's gonna start all over again.
The challenge of archery is what keeps both Robert and Lance coming back. And the memories from this experience has not only changed their lives, but has truly motivated them to continue the quest.